All right, so the situation in Wisconsin and in a lot of other areas in the U.S. just continues to get worse. I mean, last night I think there was two or three people shot, a lot of rioting. Um, the National Guard was not brought in for some reason. Yeah, so things are probably gonna heat up again for a little bit. They'll die down, depending. We'll see about it dying down, but they will die down eventually. Um, I mean, one of the only good things to come out of this is the fact that all of a sudden the media is no longer worried about being paranoid about the virus, so that's a good thing. But basically, this is from Andy No, and he says police scanner audio in Kenosha indicates a woman called 911 to report Jacob Blake was at her home and wasn't supposed to be and had stolen her keys. Responding police were made aware of Blake's arrest warrant for domestic abuse and a felony sex crime. Again, so the mainstream media narrative and the Black Lives Matter narrative has been completely disproven. And the thing that really bothers me is that I see so many people that just blindly believe the media. They just blindly believe the media that this was this racist incident and they killed him or they shot him for no reason. In reality, number one, even if you want to make the argument that they shot him for no reason, which just flat out isn't true, but even if you want to make that argument, where is the evidence of racism? It's like I've been saying all along. Where is the evidence of racism? Because just because a white person shoots a black person doesn't mean racism. And the fact that that's pretty much the BLM narrative and the leftist narrative just goes to show which side is actually the racist, because their argument is literally um, if there's a shooting of people of different races, then it must be racism, right? When in reality, the vast majority of the time, it isn't. And here's the other thing too: is that um, black people are more likely to be members of hate groups than white people. Black people are more likely to be black supremacists than whites are to be white supremacists. So, the idea of the race that we should be most worried about racism from is whites, is it doesn't bear out whatsoever. Like, whites are probably one of the least races that literally exist. Like, probably. I mean, no one calls out Mexico for having it literally written in their constitution that they need to stay majority Hispanic. No one gets mad at Japan for allowing next to no immigration. It's only whites that are attacked for being racist. And why is that? Because they want to fundamentally alter the way society is run, and the main group standing in the way of that is whites. So that's why they're attacked so much. So, but anyway, getting back to the main point here, this all this rioting and outrage is literally for nothing again. Like, literally for nothing again. It's the same thing with George Floyd. Now, I think George Floyd is slightly different in the fact that I do believe the officers could have handled it differently, but did they do anything that was illegal? I don't believe so up at this point. And again, people get all hysterical, oh, the knee on the neck, but um, number one, there's no evidence that shows that the knee on the neck killed George Floyd, and there's plenty of evidence that he died of a drug overdose. That's literally what the medical examiner said, and the fact that he was complaining about not being able to breathe long before the knee was ever on the neck, and he was clearly having a lot of issues. So, and but again, people say, "Oh, well, I wouldn't have done the knee on the neck," and that a lot of I've seen other cops say, "Oh, I would never do that," and it's insane. But again, the Minneapolis Police Department, that was an approved maneuver. Like, can you blame people for doing something that their superiors have approved them to do? Like, I don't think you can. Now, if you want to make that argument, fine, but charging someone with murder or manslaughter is way overcharged. Maybe some small negligence, but this is probably something that shouldn't even get a cop fired. I mean, it probably should maybe get him punished, but to a small degree, if any, right? But again, that's going off the evidence we know right now. Maybe evidence will come out that the cop from Minneapolis was this horrible racist. Yeah, maybe. Or maybe he was this terrible guy that was out to kill people. Maybe. But with the evidence we know right now, those cops are innocent. And it's the same thing in this situation, in that Blake was. I mean, I don't understand, too. Like, how in the world can people defend people like this? Like, this is really the best thing. You think that there's this horrible racism out there, and the best examples that you can come up with to prove your racism is a guy who was wanted for domestic abuse and felony sex crime, and not only that, was resisting arrest and had a weapon on him. Like, that's the best example you can come up with. Like, if that's the best example, there is literally no police brutality whatsoever if that's the best example you can come up with. Now, I do believe that um, police brutality does exist to some degree. It's just not nearly as bad as what most people would have you think. Like, it's not nearly as bad as what most people would have you think. And again, if it was, then they wouldn't have to point to examples like this to prove their point, because this example doesn't even come close to proving their point. So anyway, again, the next thing, again, one of the other narratives that's just a complete lie out there, that, oh, he was just trying to break up a fight. But the reality is that that's complete BS. And even if that is the case too, like, I don't understand people. Like, it's very simple. If you don't resist arrest, your chances of getting killed go down so much it's not even funny. Like, again, I've brought this up before. Like, I'd like to see some stats for the amount of unarmed, even people, but if you want to say blacks, fine. The amount of unarmed people or blacks that don't resist arrest that get killed. And the reason they don't do that is because that number would be so low, it's not even, that number might even be zero for all we know. Because a lot of these people that are unarmed, the number is actually like 10 to 15. Um, a lot of them do pose serious threats to cops, namely people like Mike Brown, who physically assaulted the officer and was trying to take his gun. Like, yeah, if you physically assault a police officer and try and take his gun, I don't know what more could possibly justify you getting shot. Like, I really don't. Um, Again, so that's the thing, and um, it just bothers me so much that, again, people were killed because of this too. And this is the thing too. You talk with the average person, they think it's no big deal. Like, people are getting killed, people's businesses are getting burned down, people's cars are getting burned down. And this is the thing too. People say, oh, they have insurance, like somehow that justifies it. No, that doesn't justify it, because what do the people who work at that business do? They got to go on unemployment apparently. Unemployment usually is a lot less than what you were making before, especially if you're making a little bit more. So the idea of this is it's absolutely insane. Like, it's absolutely insane that this kind of stuff is even a question. I mean, this story literally should have been local news, if that, right? But the fact that it's this worldwide thing and there's mass rioting and stuff going on, it's insane. And this is the thing, the last thing I want to point out too is that even if you want to think that, oh, this was racism and it's the worst thing in the world and police brutality and all these lies, frankly, and again, I've completely debunked every one of the BLM, this is police brutality, this is a racist incident. It's been completely disproven. It couldn't have been any more disproven. Um, Even if you want to make that argument, rioting is not going to change anything. If anything, it's only going to make people less likely to support you. And this is the thing, too, that even amongst blacks, support for BLM has gone down over the last couple months. Why? Because anybody with half a brain, which seems to be less and less people these days, but nonetheless, anybody with half a brain sees this kind of stuff and doesn't support it, like that, and doesn't support it. Like, it's absolutely insane that this stuff's even a question. This is from Paul Joseph Watson, and he says, well, President Trump was labeled a fascist for suggesting the election should be delayed. New Zealand's Prime Minister just did exactly that with barely a whimper of dissent. Now, again, this kind of stuff gets so boring to point out. I mean, I could literally make multiple videos every day simply pointing out leftist hypocrisy. Um, but the point being is that I really don't know how many. I guess the point being is, how many of these cases do we need to see before people consider the fact that they may be wrong? Like, this is the biggest problem when it comes to all this kind of stuff these days, is that people just don't have the ability to even consider the fact that they may have been wrong. Like, they just don't. And that's why things are so polarized nowadays, is because most people, especially people on the left, um, rather than just admitting they're wrong, it's double down. right? Like this is why these protests and all this garbage is getting so far out of control, and this is why communism killed so many more people than any like the boogeyman far right ideologies. Um, because they never have they will never admit they're wrong. They will literally never admit they're wrong. I mean, it's the same reason why California and New York are literally, if they keep going the way they're going, they will be literally the worst states to live in the next, 10 years or so. And most people are going to want to move out of there, and the only people that are going to be left are the poor. And because there's no tax base from anybody in the middle to upper class who has half a brain, they will leave, and there will be no tax base left. And because the left is entirely dependent upon taxing the you know what out of the middle class and especially the upper class to make ends meet, when those people are gone, or at the very least half those people are gone, they're not going to be able to pay for anything. So, yeah, those states are going to be completely destroyed if they keep going the way they're going. And they probably will, because, again, like I said, these people will never admit they're wrong. They'll just keep doubling down. I mean, I already see a lot of these people out of these states saying, oh, we just need to raise taxes. Like, they're so ignorant. Like, it's not even fun. Like, they could literally have every person personally come up to them before they leave the state and be like, yeah, I'm leaving because the taxes are too high. And these people would still be so ignorant to suggest, yeah, we need more taxes. Like, that's just how ignorant the average person is. And it's the same thing with this kind of stuff. Like, it's the same thing with this kind of stuff. They have no morals, they have no principles, they have no ethics. It's simply, what can we do to gain power? They really do not care. So anyway, the last thing I wanted to bring up is, yeah, getting to some Canadian news finally. Um, this is from Mark Fries, and he says, so someone tell me the media isn't getting its narrative marching orders. Cynical spreaders is now the new hot phrase for the globalists. And again, they run headlines out of multiple, news outlets, basically blaming Saskatchewan and Alberta, and basically saying, oh, survey shows that they're the provinces where people are least concerned about the whole pandemic, which to me doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no way that if you poll the average person in Nunavut or the Northwest Territories, that they're going to be more worried about it than someone in Edmonton. I guarantee you that's not the case. Like, I guarantee it, because the virus literally doesn't even exist in those territories. You look at these people in Edmonton and Calgary, a lot of them are paranoid out of their minds. It's more or less the people in the rural areas that aren't worried. And I would say even the majority of people aren't worried. Like, I've probably talked to, in the last couple months, probably 50 people, at least gotten their direct opinion, or at the very least kind of heard them hint around at their opinion. And I would say maybe 5 of those 50 are actually paranoid about it. Um, I've heard far more people who literally could care less. A lot of people are most people are kind of neutral, to where they recognize that, yeah, it's clearly been, um, we've clearly overreacted to it, but it is still somewhat of an issue, which is kind of my position. I mean, the clear position is, yeah, there should be some um, small amount of reasonable precautions taken, but I mean, mandatory masks, lockdowns of any form are completely pointless. The only precautions should be strongly suggesting that people who are sick not go out, and if they do go out, then wear a mask, because that is the one time that wearing a mask is good for someone. Wearing a mask for someone who isn't sick is not a good idea under pretty much any circumstances. But anyway, I mean, this main story here, I guess, it's just sheerly trying to sow more division, I believe. Like, I mean, and if that's not their intention, that's what the goal, you know, that's what the consequence of what they're pointing out. Because, I mean, Saskatchewan has not been a hard hit province. I mean, they've had some small outbreaks in certain areas, but as a whole, Saskatchewan has not been hard hit. Like, they really haven't. And Alberta has, but only in very isolated areas, like very isolated areas. I mean, you look at some of these outbreaks, like there, yeah, we have 100 new cases in a day, but 50 of them are from, one apartment building or one Hutterite colony or something like that. So the idea of this being this big, massive issue is absolutely insane. And the very ironic thing about it is that this is a compliment to most of these people. Like, this is a compliment that, yeah, you're telling us that we're the ones that are least concerned about the virus, with a death rate that's the same as the flu and maybe slightly more contagious, like, yeah, if anything, that's a compliment. So the idea that I mean, like I say, it's a compliment to people from Alberta and Saskatchewan, at least the ones with their heads on straight. And it's meant to sow division for the people that see this from, Quebec and Ontario and the East, right? Because, oh, those stupid hicks from Alberta and Saskatchewan don't care about the virus with a death rate that's the same as the flu. Like, again, it's that's what's going to be happening, right? So, um, anyway, that's kind of the last thing I wanted to bring up. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on those other platforms. They're all linked up in the description. And the last thing, stay tuned for more.